Welcome everyone. It is a little past noon, so we're going to get started. Welcome to this month's Kelsey Museum Virtual Flash Talk. Today's presentation will last about 15 minutes, followed by 15 minutes of Q&A with you, our audience. During the Q&A, please use the chat feature to type in your questions or the raise your hand icon, and we will call on you and you can unmute yourselves to ask your question. We do ask that you mute yourself again afterwards so that we don't get any feedback from our very sensitive microphones. This lecture is being recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel at a later date. Our speaker today is Laura Motta, Kelsey research scientist. Laura is a paleoethnobotanist. Did I get that right, Laura? And is the director of the environmental lab at the Gabii project in Italy. She will be speaking on her investigations of crop production and farming practices during the transitional period between 8th and 6th centuries BCE. Welcome, Laura.
Hello, everybody. Yes, as Mallory said, I am an archaeobotanist, a paleoethnobotanist, but I would define myself maybe more as an environmental archaeologist at large. So today we are going to talk about city crops and chemistry, and and see how we combine these three things together, and what we can do when we combine these three things together. So I'm working in several sites and several contexts, and one of the commonalities among these contexts is that I'm working in a period that witnessed the transition from villages to cities. So I'm exploring from different point of view urbanization processes. And here I'm kind of simplifying a lot, but one of the issue that I'm particularly interested in is this idea that the urbanization process should be connected with intensification of agriculture. So that very bluntly put, when you go from a small settlement to a bigger city, there is an increase in economic complexity associated to an increase in political complexity. There is a demographic growth, and the demographic growth needs to be supported, intensification of production, and that would mean in different sphere of the economic system, and that would mean a reorganization of the agricultural practices, so intensification of agriculture. So there are several issues with this kind of approach that sees all these elements connected in a causal link, okay, is that intensification of production that we clearly see in the long term, okay, when you have the developing urban centers, doesn't mean intensification of agriculture, meaning that the word here problematic is intensification, meaning that to produce more crop, you can intensify agricultural system or extensify agricultural system. So you can have more yields per land of unit of land, sorry, or you can have more land cultivated. So, that is one of the issues. And the other issue is that clearly there is relation among these elements, but causation is much more difficult to pinpoint in archaeology in general. So I would see that more than an arrow of causal relation, like a feedback loop in which all these elements are true, but not not really maybe one the cause of the other, or let's say that exploring the causal relation is more problematic. So sorry, what is going on here? Okay. So one of the, my question is it really possible to see that this concept of farming intensification in the archaeological record? And I'm looking, and I'm presenting to you today some example from Central Italy. This is the area I've been working for many years, and a new data set are becoming available, and so we can explore the issue with a different approach. So the current discourse is, again, that, you know, between the 10th and the 6th century, in Tyrrhenian Central Italy, so in the area more or less marked in red in the map, you have a shift in the settlement patterns, and this period is also the transition between the Bronze Age to the Iron Age, a shift in settlement patterns from villages to budding cities. And this process is accompanied by economic process, as I was saying before, and this budding city would have a new demand for food drawn from the hinterland, and, you know, a new system that were kind of forced to produce more and to kind of supply over greater distances, and so an increase in production and a centralization in production. So this is the current discourse, but the specific characteristic, okay, are difficult to pinpoint because very often indirect proxy records are used, like the estimate of the territory of each urban center, or the estimate of the population, the estimate of yields of ancient crops, so estimates over estimates over estimates. What I'm going to tell you today is, you know, a little bit a different story, or at least what I'm trying to attempt to for a different story. So we are going to look at direct crop remains, okay, so direct evidence, crop remains from 3 archaeological sites, Rome, Gabii, and Tarquinia. So, you know, the 3 archaeological sites are a similar chronology, and we are going to explore, you know, the kind of transition phase, again, from the 10th to the 6th century, and they are located in a, I would say, similar environmental condition. So just a few words about the sites. One is Rome, okay, and in Rome, the samples, the material is coming from different excavation sites, all located at the very heart of Rome on the northern slope of the Palatine Hill. And the data has been studied the last, I would say, 20 years by me and by Fanny Gabriel at the University La Sapienza of Rome. So all of this work is coming from really a collaborative work from many archaeobotanists, okay? So at the Palatine Hill, the material is coming from arts dated from the 10th to the 8th century BCE, and from other contexts dated from the 8th and the 6th century BCE. The other excavation where the samples are coming from is Gabii, from the the Gabii project run by University of Michigan. Sorry, this is showing up on my screen. I don't know if you see it, but anyway, so Gabii, the context are arts again, arts and the stone building, arts in the 7th century, stone building in the 6th century. And we have material from 3 areas marked here on the map. From Tarquinia, Tarquinia is the 3rd site. Tarquinia is an Etruscan site. The previous Roman Gabii are Latin sites. The material is coming from the Civita, the excavation at Complesso Monumentale, and the samples are being analyzed, as we talked, at the University of Cambridge by Frida Smith, and the subsamples has been done by Fanny Gabriel. And again, we are talking about arts. Maybe in this context, there is also a ritual component. And again, the chronology is 8 to 6. So what are the crops telling us? The identification, I mean, this is very kind of normal standard archaeobotany, identifying what we have in the context, okay, in the samples. So, and here you see the example of Rome. This graph represents ubiquity. So how frequent is a crop, okay, in the context. So not how much, not how abundant, okay, so not how rich are the context, but how frequent in the site this crop appear, frequently in the site this crop appear. And what I want to notice here is that in the earlier period, so the top graph, you have more emmer, a little slightly more emmer than barley, more barley than emmer, sorry. And the most kind of common pulse is fava bean. So what we have retrieved in the sites are a mixture of cereals, grains, crops, and legumes. Okay, these were the main subsistence crops of the time. In the second period, there is a switch. Emmer becomes more common, okay, than barley, and fava bean is still the most common pulse. If we look here at the left bottom, at Tarquinia, we have barley, at least in the subsample that Fanny Gabriel had analyzed. That is a little bit, again, slightly more common than emmer. And fava bean is, again, the most common legume. And there is some millet also, okay? So what is considered a minor crop, even if I don't agree on that, that is not attested in Rome. At Gabii, barley is really more common than emmer in this earlier period. Emmer becomes more common much later in Republican period, so toward the 2nd century BCE. And not only we have fava bean, but we have a lot of bitter veg, and we have quite a good amount of millet. So what I see here is that there is no really a huge transformation from the earlier period, like Rome 10th, 8th century, versus the later samples in Tarquinia and Gabii. There is just a slight difference among sites and among periods that can be explained with cultural choices, for example, or economic networks, for example, the millet in Gabii, but not really a total restructuring of the agricultural system. What we can do to look, a little bit more in detail, or have more information about farming practices. Okay, so not only crop choices, but farming practices. We can look at isotopes, and the most common used one on plant remains are carbon and nitrogen. Carbon is used as a proxy for water availability, and now I don't want to enter here in too much technical details, but the ratio between 2 stable isotopes, carbon-12 and carbon-13, are used as a proxy for water availability, because when the plant is stressed, discriminate against one of the 2 isotopes. And nitrogen, that is a proxy in terms of nutrients in the soil, and an increase in nitrogen level has been related in archaeological studies to manuring practices. So what we did is to test the levels, okay, the values of carbon and nitrogen in single seeds coming from different samples. And here you see this, just an example from Gabii. We tested barley and we tested emmer because they're the most common crops, right? And you know, we mapped the value, we plotted the value according to seeds and to chronology. Okay. So the different colors represent the different chronological phase on the excavation, and you know the left is older, the right is newer. So what you do is that you kind of combine this data to see the trends through time, and this is what we did. So here you see a graph in which the different colors represent the different sites. So the three sites combined, okay? Left is for barley, right is for emmer, and we are looking here at the values, the changing values of carbon, okay, carbon 13. Well, the changing values of the ratio between carbon 13 and carbon 12. And so, you know, the proxy for water availability. And as I said, each color is a different site, and the dotted line is the range, the temporal range, okay, that is covered by dot, okay. So because time is moving again from older to more recent, left to right. So what we see is that there is a sort of increase in carbon levels, okay, and after a decrease, and both in barley and in emmer. And this is significant because the plants, the two plants, the two crops have different physiology, and so the fact that both of them record the same sort of pattern is important for the interpretation. If we look at, and also, sorry, I need to, what we see is that this is happening not just at one site, but the three sites seems to show more or less the same trend. So when we look at nitrogen, proxy for manuring, we see instead, you know, that the data do not show a clear trend. So to conclude, what we can see here, well, that there is, I mean, while the major crops are the same at the three sites, and that is, you know, we expected so, because those are the crops that is being cultivated in that part of Italy since the Neolithic. There is some kind of variation among the sites that can be, as I said, displayed by cultural choices or exchange networks, also buffer strategies in times of shortage, or, you know, who are your allies? They would provide you with more emmer or barley or a little bit of millet, as Gabii. That barley is not what it was expected. I mean, this importance of barley as a major crop. There is a sort of dismissal in the modern literature, okay, that look at Roman agriculture in terms of barley. That in terms of manuring, we don't see a clear trend, and actually the levels of nitrogen are pretty low, and so it looks like there is not so much, you know, active adding of manuring. And that there is anyway some variability in these isotopes that suggest that there are, you know, probably a variety of practice used by these budding urban centers. But the important thing is that you know, the trend in carbon that we see in increase and decrease in the end of the 6th century So this is interesting because now I'm telling you a little story. So my colleagues that are working with me in this project, one is a palinologist and the other is trained as an environmental person. They see the role of environment in that. They see, that the fact that the trend is happening at the 3 sites and is happening in 2 different species of plants or crops means that there is an environmental shift, probably a change in the rain pattern, okay, that is kind of recorded by the plants. And so that this change, this increase would allow actually more production, and so would allow the urbanization. I'm much more skeptical to look just at that data set from the environmental perspective. And I wonder if actually the decrease in the 6th century, that doesn't make sense so much environmentally unless you think about the rapid climatic episodes, is more related to the social unrest that both Gabii and Tarquinia are experiencing in that period. So bottom line, we need to explore more, and we need to have a longer data set that goes also to the 5th and 4th century in order to disentangle a little bit the kind of human actions and human happenings, historical happenings, from the environmental signal. But what I think we can be confident to say is that there is not really a strong signals toward a centralized, a standardized production, at least in this period. So we know that eventually will come, okay? We know that eventually these cities in the Republican period and in imperial period will be supplied by fresh, free threshing weeds and naked weeds. That, of course, the Roman economy in the Republican period is, a much more complex, but it's not happening so early. So the urbanization process from the agricultural point of view is much more kind of diluted in time. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. We did have a question, a technical question about one of your charts and one of the terms that you use. And it was in the ubiquity charts. What does NID mean? So it was like wheat, NID.
Yes. Yes. Sorry, because I was. I was going very fast. Okay, let's go this. NID means cereals that are, cereal crops that has not been identified, meaning that we were not able to understand if the grain belonged to barley or to wheat because of preservation issues. So we can understand that is either barley or wheat or maybe oat, other cereals, but not which kind.
Great. So not identified. Does anyone have any other questions for Laura? You can type them in the chat or you can raise your hand.
Hi, Simon.
Hi. I think this concurs very well with the low impact in terms of geomorphology and probably vegetation as well. So in terms of vegetation, the impact on the landscape really takes off in the as a generalized level, takes off in the Roman period. Yeah. And also the limited geomorphological studies show very heavy runoff in the Roman period and accumulation in the valleys, but not yet detected earlier. Obviously, this is partly negative evidence, but I think it makes a very coherent pattern.
Yeah,
which is very,
everything
very
is happening
interesting.
Much later.
Yes,
for the
exactly.
kind of good, peace of mind of who is trying to say that everything is happening in the 8th century or in the 9th century. Right?
I think it sounds as though it's relatively low key and local. But very, very interesting. Thank you. So, thank you for allowing us to cross the Atlantic in a small group.
Yes. Okay. I hope I didn't, I didn't go too fast.
One question that Frieda Schmidt had was, is this being recorded? Because she's sitting waiting to hear Martin Jones give a Darwin lecture in Cambridge. And unfortunately, in the hall where she's based, the edu-ROM is not working very well, whatever she's trying. So she didn't hear very well. But I heard pretty well, I have to say. So it's very clear.
No. Okay. So yes, it's recorded. So it's going to be available later on. I mean, I don't know, in a week or so, probably, right, Mallory, on the site.
That would be brilliant.
But of course, Frida is very. I mean, I can do that again for Frida, right? Also,
no, of course,
more technical details.
And in fact, as soon as we get our oxygen isotopes through on the animal bones, no, the human remains, sorry, not the animal, I'm thinking of Angela, then from Kiel, it would be very nice to have a collective meeting to discuss
absolutely.
all the interrelationships from Tarquinia and put it in the broader context that you've done so elegantly.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. This is very, very interesting new work.
Thank you, Simon.
For me, anyway. Maybe not for others. I don't.
Thank you, Simon. Okay.
Laura, one more question. It says, with regard to the water availability changes, are there other confirming data sets like tree rings?
Okay. You are opening. Thank you for the question. No, for the area. Okay. The kind of paleoclimatic reconstruction in the area are mostly based on palynology of lakes, local lakes, and also other proxy records from lake levels, like different microorganisms and different other proxy. The problem is the resolution. So the kind of study that we are doing, the periodization is 1 century, if not less. So, and that kind of fluctuations are difficult to pinpoint in what has been already published, okay? One thing that we try to do, and here I can show you, is to use anyway charcoal, okay? Charcoals to kind of discriminate between the human impact, right? Because water availability can be also irrigation. I didn't mention that, but there are different things, right? Not just rain that can affect water availability. And so if we can compare wood and also the charcoal, because that is how it's preserved, right? So charred wood, and dating the ring with a specific enough chronological resolution that we can compare to our chronological phase in archaeology, we would have the record of not cultivated plant versus cultivated plants in terms of water availability. The problem is chronology. Meaning that one way to do it is with radiocarbon dating, but the radiocarbon dating in this period get in a plateau in a calibration curve, and so again, the range that the radiocarbon date would provide is bigger than the archaeological date of our samples. And so this is something that we are thinking about with Paula Remer at Belfast. I think it's the way to go, but probably you need such huge numbers of charcoals that for the moment is not feasible unless we have a huge grant. And of course, is also a problem in terms of archaeological context, how mixed are the charcoal in the context for chronology. So, no, at the moment, bottom line, no, at the moment we don't have an environmental record at the same chronological resolution that we can compare.
Thank you, Laura. That was very interesting. So thank you all for joining us for this month's Flash Talk. Our next Flash Talk will be in April. It is April 1st. We're not joking. Don't worry, it's not April Fools. It will be April 1st, and we hope you're able to join us for that Flash Talk. We do also have a virtual Saturday sampler coming up on Saturday, March 19th at 2 p.m. Eastern. Well, it'll be Eastern Daylight Time because Daylight Savings Time starts here on the 13th. And the topic for that will be focusing on Egyptian perspectives of the afterlife. So that'll be a docent-led general public tour. So thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you next time.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good weekend. Bye. Bye.